in this situation. I think that whether, well, it wasn't ours, we had to claim it, I guess, in one sense. And also, I think we used a kind of nervous energy as part of the dynamic of the work we were doing. But there's a kind of wonderful confidence, ease that they communicate, and then the characters can go anywhere. The situations, I mean, Rachel was doing this play in the backspace of Passmarais, suspended, and yet there was a kind of, a sense of I have a right to be there. I'm here. The rest of it we can work out, the story, the metaphors, and all of that. But it's very interesting that, and I guess I'm learning from that.
I think one other thing I learned from my parents too was that it's not just the work you do, but to become a better artist and a better actor, you have to stay open and curious about the world and about and travel and read books and like read the newspaper every day and know what's going on, because it's not just locking yourself into a small theater community that makes you a better actor or whatever kind of community. It's to become a better actor, you have to become a well-rounded person, and that's what makes you a good artist and a good actor.
I'd like to say my kids have taught me in no uncertain terms to prepare better for my auditions. Nowadays, this generation, they are all over it. They are so well prepared for their auditions, and when we were young and casual, we sort of just ambled in and, threw ourselves at the auditioners.
More competition.
Yeah, and I watched carefully.
It's a tough lesson, too.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Eddie, I've just been reading that your great-grandfather, James Mavor, knew George Bernard Shaw, who named one of the characters in one of his plays, James Mavor, after him. So that sort of makes you fourth generation, doesn't it? Were you really wanted
not really, because James Mavor was not involved in this.
No, I know he wasn't involved, but he was a really remarkable guy, too, as was your grandmother, and
which, well, I guess people probably don't know, the Arts and Letters Club here. My great-grandfather was one of the people who was here from the very beginning. So I'm not a member because I can't afford to be a member. But I would be the fourth generation member of the Arts and Letters Club. He was a writer, and James Mavor, and Paula, you would have liked him. He didn't have a high school education. I think he maybe had grade 10. But he was a very lively and interesting fellow, and he was friends with Tolstoy, and he traveled extensively all over Russia and China, and in fact he's responsible for bringing Doukhobors here, because when Tolstoy wrote him and said, hey, we've got this religious problem going on here, James Mavor wrote back and said, well, hey, we've got lots of space, so that's how that happened. And so he was a really interesting guy. Anyway, he came back to Toronto and decided that the University of Toronto needed a Department of Russian Studies, so he started. So fast forward about 15 or 20 years, and there was a lot of problems because he didn't have a high school education, never mind a university one, and they tried to kick him out, but he was so popular that they couldn't get rid of him, even though he had no credentials to be the head of the Department of Russian Studies. But go Canadians, I say. Any other questions?
You guys have the unique opportunity to see family members portray different people, different characters, different roles. And I was just wondering if you guys have any particular favorites that you've seen your parents play or siblings play that have sort of struck you in different ways?
She played my grandmother, but she's not related to me, but I just thought it's
That's okay.
She played my grandmother on Train 48, and we had this chemistry and this connection that was, I think, partly because she played my aunt in a movie when I was a kid too. So I don't know, there was this kind of this connection I've had with Anne since then. And then when she came on the show to play my grandmother, it was like it felt really good. And we had this amazing kind of connection going on. So I gotta say I've seen her do lots of stuff, but that was my favorite.
My favorite role that my mom played was when she played a baby. That was a really interesting role to see your mother play, especially when you were, because I was a preteen. So it was it was strange, and weird thing to see your mother in a one-piece sleeper after my sleep. Having tantrums, that was very cool.
My favorite play of my mom was The Stone Angel at Vita Pascal.
Oh, yeah.
Where she actually hurt her back and had to play arranging Hagar's life from a child right up to she's till 90, and she had to play lying on her back near the end because she hurt her lower back, and she, I believe, every minute of it, and I was very proud of her. That was amazing. Yeah.
And I remember being very young at the Royal Alex Theatre and going to see a play in The Killing of Sister George. Which is a very strong lesbian character, right?
It was the, yeah.
And I was only probably about 6 or something, and being right on the balcony and just like,
Of course, quite a stir, believe me, in those days, the Royal Alex. Yeah, because, you know, it was very unusual to have a play about lesbians. And there I was, striding about, yeah.
Any other questions? Anyone? I think it's only fair that Don and Edwina should do a little bit of shameless self-promotion, because you are actually creating your own show about your family, are you not?
yes, we are. We are creating it for the CBC, hopefully, to shoot next year. But kind of really for and with my sister Megan, and dealing with Megan and Mom playing themselves, really being themselves, and taking a story of one actress coming home and moving back in with her mom and starting to look and say, how the hell did I end up in this business anyway? And what is this about? And where does all that performing and identity as an actor end? And where do I begin? And what about the past and all that stuff? So the CBC is very excited about it, and we are, so we're keeping our fingers crossed that we're going to be able to do that.
It's frustrating, actually, for those of us who are involved in performing families, that there aren't more people writing for those very families, because it would seem it would make a lot of sense. The Davis family, who started a theater called the Crest Theater in the 50s in Toronto, there were 2 brothers and a sister, Barbara Chilcott and Don Davis and Murray Davis, had a play written for them by an English writer named J.B. Priestley, called The Glass Cage or something like that. And it was really pompous, sort of silly drama. And they did it here, and then they took it over, and it was going to be done in London. And they all took the train down to see Mr. J.B. Priestley and discussed certain problems that they had with the play, because he'd written it without ever meeting them. And he was just an absolute stick in the mud, and not one single golden word of his was going to be changed, and that was that. So they all trucked out with their tails between their legs, very disappointed because they couldn't fix the play. But aside from that, to my knowledge, and aside from the work that you've done, because you wrote another play about your folks too.
I did. I had an opportunity to do that at the Gravenhurst Opera House, which of course was the, wasn't it the Davises also that started Croner Theatre?
Was that a straw hat? Yes. So
So
they were
then
awesome.
I was invited, well, my brother actually invited me because he was asked to direct and create a play about the Straw Hat Players. So he came to me and said, well, do you want to write your first play? And so it was wonderful because we took, Araby Lockhart and my dad and their stories of becoming young actors and starting the Straw Hat Players, and Mum coming in, and then Megan's, the added treat on that show was that Megan's daughter Lila, who had never done any professional work at all, came on to play Mum as a child. And it was just that thing when you talk about, she just got on the stage and just the presence, was there. She just is like she'd been there all her life. So,
Bread in the bone. Well, thank you, my fellow travelers, very much for this evening and sharing your stories with us. And gosh, it's great to see you all together. And somebody write us a play. Somebody write a play.
Thank you all for coming. It's been fabulous. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry to couple more of you here, but fortunately for the magic of videotape, we have it all captured, and eventually people will be able to see what happened here. Thanks. Coming great to talk.